Okay, I am honored, very belatedly, it feels like. It took the entire globe to keep us apart. Uh, to connect with you, Sarah Wilson, in Australia. Welcome.
Thank you. I know we've been sort of social media mates for quite some time, in passing, ships in the night as we do our work. But
Busy people.
Noticing you, and I suppose you've probably been seeing what I've been doing too.
Well, very much, and for a while, and yeah, in all the speediness of our current social media capitalism world, you still are a bright light from way over yonder. And a dear friend of mine, Millie, I guess, worked a little bit with you, and also is a fan.
Yes, yeah, lovely. Yeah. It's amazing how they intersect and how many people have said to me, "Oh, Elephant Journal, you know those guys?" I'm like, well, not really. We just kind of look out for each other. Yeah.
Right.
So fun you're here.
Anything we can do. And there's so much we could talk about, from the sort of the ethical business stuff, which I'm obsessed with, Small Giants, the way you ran your business and ended it, to we had a very fiery green room, not fiery in a bad way, but talking about climate change. There's literally an active shooting going on in my hometown right now. You can hear the helicopters. Talking about gun control or lack thereof. Australia did pretty well with that one. Talking about scale pale males, as you call them. We folk are, I was just thinking, like, any pale male who is not entirely stale should welcome the end of patriarchy, the end of this white supremacy bullshit. Toxic masculinity isn't good for any of us. Racism isn't good for any of us, even the oppressive class. So maybe let's start there. How, you were thinking, you're talking about maybe getting even more active. Can you say anything about that?
Oh, well, I mean, I can say where I'm at with it all. Here in Australia, as you've got helicopters circling looking for a pale male stale shooter, we've got a Parliament House full of, essentially people avoiding the sexual assault issue, which is just everywhere at the moment here. It's really exploded. And, it's kind of occurred off the Me Too movement, but it's gone to the next level, and it's exposed just how evasive the male culture or the masculine culture is here in Australia. Australia's at the next level, by the way, because we have had 30 years of sustained economic growth. We had a slight blip in about July last year. That was our COVID dip. Literally, it just sort of went like this and then going back up again.
Wow.
We are the only OECD country in the world that has not had a recession in 3 decades. And so it's created this opulence and this complacency, and I describe it in my book as sort of the equivalent of the overweight dude on the couch with the remote and then Twitter in the other hand and calling in Uber Eats and basically just going, she'll be right. I don't have to engage. So that sums up political culture here at the moment. It's these flaccid blokes wanting it to all be right, because it has been for quite some time in this country. And it's like a volcano. It's just come to the surface and it's bubbling over. And there's this really wonderful female rage, like a Kali rage, which is such an important rage in times of crisis and in times of planetary decay. I mean, if anyone out there is into Hindu goddesses and gods, Kali is a goddess that comes down to earth and basically cuts off the heads of the men when they disrespect Mother Earth and goes, get your act together. And she actually came down when her husband was meditating too much. Don't you love that? Like, just kind of chilling out, all love and light, and letting the planet burn. So that's where we're at the moment. And in my case, I suppose I've been outspoken for some time, and I'm not a she'll be right kind of type. I've worked in mainstream media for many years, and I think it always comes as a bit of a surprise to people that somebody like me, white, female, middle class, would come out and get really fired up on a bunch of topics. What it's meant, though, is that there's a bit of an independence movement happening here of female independence with a climate agenda coming into seats and taking them over. So wealthy people backing them, putting together a campaign, and these women coming in and taking over the seat. And there's a bunch of women who are doing that really effectively here. But for the next election, we're all hoping there'll be more female independents. And I suppose, alluding to what you're saying, I have been, asked to be one of those, and I am still considering it. I'm waiting to see if it's the best use of my time, my energy. I am 110% committed at this stage in my life to being of service to the planet and to my understanding of life and to humanity, because it's all encompassing, and it's about being artful as to how I do that. Is it best used hands-on, writing, politics? I'm not quite sure, but I try to take the lead from life, because it generally comes and finds me. It whacks me over the head and drags me to wherever I need to go generally.
Yeah. No, I love that you're considering it, because I think you have a real platform, your own platform that you've developed over decades, and you have a real opportunity to, at this stage in your career and your life, to choose where to be of service. And politics is, low-hanging fruit. Is very tempting, but I have a lot of friends in politics, and I'm sure you do, and a lot of them spend a lot of time doing really good work that no one notices, and doing no good work that people, like just sitting around listening to this kind of partisanship and this BS. And then there's a lot of fear and a lot of hate and a lot of threats going on. So it's not necessarily a safe, if you read or listened to Michelle Obama, she was never a fan of Barack going into service, because it just is not necessarily safe, or at the very least pleasant. Whereas from writing your wonderful books, you have a new book, we'll get into that. You can have change and still not be, completely overwhelmed by trolls in real life, which happens politically.
Yeah, but then of course, the way I operate is that life sometimes, and I say this in my most recent book, quoting James Hollis, the Jungian psychoanalyst. He says that life calls our soul, or our souls call us to an appointment with life. And we've got to turn up, and we've got to do what is required of us. Otherwise we tend to get, a tap, then a shake, and then a shove, And so I suppose, with things happening at the moment in the world and things shifting so dramatically, and there's a side to me that goes, it could be different. It actually might be a different kind of debate, and there might be an opportunity for more independent, climate-orientated, awake women, or at least people with a feminine perspective, to shift that dialogue that can be so trolly and destructive and kind of go nowheresville, So I'm reading the situation for now. But I'll go to wherever I'm asked to go if it feels like it's going to be the most productive thing right now, because we're going to throw everything at this situation.
Yeah.
We have to do everything we can, and that's sort of my mantra, and I try to live it as best I can.
Yeah, well, we should stay in touch about that decision, because I think about politics too, and I feel like there's a real need, but at the same time, people want to have an idea of you and they want to push you to do something, which is a very patriarchal kind of attitude that the world works. And, you have to listen to yourself and do what's best. That said, Kali wouldn't be afraid of anything. She'd go in there and chop all the heads off of the old guard. So I welcome that. And, Australia with the fires, you were talking about the erosion of the beaches and the coral bleaching, plastic in our oceans. Like the US, like the whole world, we're all in this together in terms of climate change, and no issue, including equity, feminism, no vital issue can survive if the planet does. We were sort of debating a little bit about nihilism. You feel like someone who, to say the least, hasn't given up. A lot of my friends, I feel like, give up before they even start. And that's why I resent it and I criticize it. And I try to urge them to care. I feel like if you have empathy, it's choiceless. You can't really give up. If you can, there's that scene in Schindler's List, my Jewish side of my family, that movie was big for them. And where he's saying, I could have saved one more life. I could have saved one more life. If you can save or help one life, let alone thousands, how could you ever be a nihilistic? How could you ever give up? So I guess that's my question for you, with all the climate depression and the sexism and the hate and the trolling, that, how do you navigate that? Are you hopeful? Are you?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in that. So
Yeah.
to answer the most recent question, am I hopeful? Absolutely, but it's a radical, active kind of hope. So it's not like I'm definitely not optimistic. Optimism is just this blind trust that everything will work itself out, but that somebody else will do it for us, or some divine force will do it for us.
Love that.
Whereas hope is optimism plus engaged action. So that's kind of what I do. And optimism is as bad as pessimism. They both basically give you a get out of jail free card, a hall pass from having to do it. So that's something that I obviously try to warn people against, is that they latch on to, oh, the dolphins are swimming in Venice again. The planet heals itself. No. Really be wary of that kind of thinking. Mind you, we need to have positive news to motivate people and to make them feel their actions count. But we've got to find a sweet spot. But a really important aspect of this, Waylon, is I actually think that, and I say this in my book, that we are a generation of adolescents where we're sitting back and we kind of know the consequences of our actions. Like, everybody knows that a takeaway coffee cup is going to take 400 years to break down. And here in Australia, 2.3 million of them going to landfill every day, right?
And if I can just make that worse briefly, you don't even want it to break down. Like, when it breaks down, it's a further problem. I mean, plastic is basically forever. Like that cup you and I probably, before we got hip to it, back in like the late 80s used, it's still having a good time out there.
Oh, it'll be around for centuries. If we don't know, that's the point. We don't know. But what we do know is we're ingesting 1 credit card size of plastic each week. I don't know that I want that in my body. And we're starting to see the ramifications of that with male fertility, female fertility, endocrine diseases, etc. Yeah, there we go. Thanks for the demonstration. That's pretty much what we're doing each week. So now where was I heading with that? Oh, that's right. So I just think that we know all of this, right? But what we're doing is we're acting as though we're adolescents, where mum and dad will pick up our wet towel or somebody else will deal with it. We're in a suspended state of adolescence. And really what we need to do is grow the fuck up and become the adults that we actually want to be. So my I guess, argument is not so much we should do this, because the draconian slap over the head doesn't work with human nature. What does work is that when people like you and I and many people listening here show that this engaged, fired up, radically caring, radically hopeful approach is more charming and more enjoyable than the status quo. Adolescence is less enjoyable than being an adult. Adulthood is where we want to be. We want to be the grown-ups in the room. So my thing is to try to make it as appealing and enticing and charming as possible, because that's how I think we'll get people on board. So,
yeah. And if I may, there's a quote by one of probably our idols, Eleanor Roosevelt, and she said she was miserable. She was taught that she was ugly her whole childhood growing up. And then one day she discovered, I think she was volunteering with homeless, and she discovered it was joyful to help out and connect. And she said the second she discovered service was true joy. She never wanted to do anything else. It actually is more fun.
Yeah.
Like, I always talk about Star Wars. I'm like, we go watch Disney, this giant corporation with this wonderful epic Star Wars that we all love to love. And it's about these little rebels fighting this, the Death Star and the Empire. But in real life, support independent media, support, the people fighting climate change, the little rebels, like people like you, they're everywhere, the generation of women running for office in the US and Australia and elsewhere. Support the rebels in real life. It's actually fun. It's more fun than just eating popcorn at a Cineplex.
Yeah,
money to Disney.
Your devices. Yeah, come and play with us. Like you used to with the figurines. I totally agree. And I think just to answer your question more broadly, that is the point of all of this. If the world is going down, and I think I can say that in this forum that it's not looking great. Let's face it. It's really, I think the IPCC is about to come out with another special report at the end of this month, if not early next month. And the prediction for where we're heading by 2050 is looking really bad. Now, that's not to say there's no hope left, because I think humans are capable of extraordinary things at the 11th hour. So that's where I rest some of my optimism, I suppose, but I'm certainly not going to wait for that to happen. I want to keep the momentum going now. Well, yesterday. But I think that that's something that I guess that's sort of my answer to your question, is that the grief and the pain and the fear that many of us are feeling, the only way to actually be able to handle that as a human being on this planet for the next, however many decades we've all got left, is to be engaged, to turn that grief and that fear into activation. And lots of psychology and various theories and studies have shown that that is the best way to deal with abject fear and terror, is to get active and to engage. So I suppose that's what I do. But also, Waylon, I found, I'm 47 now, and a lot of my hopes and dreams for what I thought my life would look like are very, very different. They've gone. And I'm extremely pragmatic now. I think there's a lot of young people that are looking at the world and they're deciding not to have children. They're making all kinds of different decisions based on the fact that things are not looking good. The prognosis is not great. The animals from our childhood picture books simply won't exist in coming decades. That's a very, very stark reality. So the way that I've sort of almost developed this radical way of living, like, all right, I hope to live till I'm in my late 90s. So really, how am I going to spend that time? Like a Carly-like, energetic, fully loving motherfucker. Like, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is the real deal. And, I say this on the back of my book. We fight to save what we love. And so I say we need to be in nature to return to our true nature, to be held and awed by it, to love it wildly, so that we will fight for it. And so in the meantime, while I've got this time on this planet, I'm just going to make sure I love and cherish and respect the life that is here. And in that process, it makes me even more engaged in fighting for it. And that's the invite that I try to put out to people is, you're feeling a bit lost and hopeless, get into nature, almost like relish it while we've got it. And then the bonus, the incredible exponential bonus to that is that then you'll just be you won't be able to help, as you say, it'll be non-negotiable. You will want to do something because you can't unsee the beauty of nature. You can't unsee that awe or unfeel that awe. And that's sort of my invitation. That's my path forward that I put forward in my book, because really I think it's the only way.
So in terms of this incredibly dynamic and painful and exciting moment, what was the message in your book that you wanted to offer? Get into nature, engage.
And come back. Well, first of all, come back to the simplicity of our natural engagement in life. Join life again, rather than thinking that we as humans are separate from it, above it. Right. We need to go back to the inevitability, because when you join inevitability, then join the flow of life. We join the big party again, and we're all in it together. And then we won't disrespect our fellow animals, our fellow trees, our fellow shells, because you do get an appreciation of how we're all part of it. And so that's very much part of it. But also the secondary message is, as humans at the top of the food chain, we have a responsibility. And so I really try to put in a bunch of practices that get us out into the world. So I know that you're aware of this, and I think we would share similar thoughts. The spiritual realm has been so insular. It has become a victim to the capitalist system where it's just been individualized. So we pick and choose the bits we want, the love and the light, the meditation, the sound circles, right? And so we do all the nice things that make me feel better. We look after our microbiome. We spend inordinate amounts of money and time making the perfect green smoothie, and yet we'll walk out of our yoga class and step over a homeless person. Or like all that money we're spending on, I don't know, yoga leggings, we could actually be putting to independent journalism or whatever it might be. And so
I've written about how like the foundation of yoga is literally, for most practitioners, PVC, polyvinyl chloride. PVC yoga mats, which are super toxic, awful for you. Our yoga pants are plastic. The green smoothie, it's shipped from
plastic straw.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
The thrown out.
I've seen both ends of it. Like I grew up in the Buddhist community, and Buddhism has been infuriatingly hard to monetize for capitalism because it's so boring. Like you're just sitting around. There's no props to sell. There's no outfits. It's not that cute or fun to show on IGTV, unlike yoga. So I've seen people really devote themselves to meditation to be of benefit to others. But yeah, there's this spiritual materialism, as Buddhists call it, that is rampant. And yeah, capitalism is it's always looking for an opportunity.
It is. Well, and that's the thing. I actually do a rally call to all the spiritualists. I mean, I call it spiritualism light, as in the diet version. Yeah. And spiritualism in every religious tradition has always been about service, sacrifice, attending to the community. And it's almost a counterpoint to our rampant individualism. So we've always had these structures in place to ensure that our inherent individualism doesn't run rampant, and we come back to the collective and ensure that we can survive, because we are actually the most feeble animal on the planet. We've got no fangs, we've got no horns, we've got no venom.
Right.
All we've got is an ability to coalesce around each other. Yeah, we need each other.
Yeah.
So individualism of the last, the neoliberalist model of the last 30 years, 50 years, has just taken us so far away from our nature. So a lot of the practices in the book that I suggest are about sticking it up, the neoliberal system. And it's really basic things. I talk about the politics of walking. I haven't owned a car for almost a decade now. I ride a bike that I built 15 years ago from secondhand componentry, and it's the most beautiful bike. It's a single speed. And I'm hoping I can get into my mid-50s and still be a woman riding a single speed bike.
You only have one bike?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, everyone here in Boulder, most people drive, but everyone here in Boulder owns like 6 bikes. It's like part of the requisite for living here, yeah.
Somebody's lent me a mountain bike, and I was a mad mountain biker for many years. So I've got one at the moment that I've borrowed, which I love. But look, I just don't need it all. I lived out of one bag for so long. It's just any possession that somebody puts on me, I'm just like, get it away from me. But some of the other practices are really about even deep reading, and I call it soul nerding out on incredible thinkers and artists who have existed before us, who've gone through similar pain, because most of the issues we're facing today are not new, and have written about it in beautiful, mindful, connected ways, which once again, that practice of engaging in it brings us back to our nature, brings us back to that connected love of life, which I believe is going to save us.
Yeah.
It's the most hopeful chance we have of saving ourselves, is to connect back to who we are. And so, yeah, there's various practices, and getting spiritually heavy, just going back to that point. So actually choosing the political aspects of spirituality, because spirituality has always been political. Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha, they were all political. They were all standing up to various forces at the time and going, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to do it better, and we're going to do it in a way that's in cahoots and attunement with our nature. So that's, I don't hold back. I'm sick of these kind of, if you want to, gentle approaches.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm fairly firm on it, because time is of the essence right now. We actually probably need a firm instruction right now.
I love it. Yeah. Someone else who doesn't hold back, who I was watching her video recently. It's Greta Thunberg, and she was asked that classic question that everyone asks anyone who cares about climate change. Was said, if you had a magic wand, what would you do right now? And she said, I wouldn't use the magic wand. Her answer was fantastic. She said, people have to care. They have to wake up. They have to move their governments to care. They have to run. We have to be the change. We can't just say, you know, there is no magic wand, she said, basically. Like, we are in the boat, and we, you know, I refuse to give up. This world is so beautiful and magical and wonderful. Why would we give up the biodiversity and the, you know, it's so exciting, and so many things are better. Like, if you want to feel hope, farmers markets, when I came back to Colorado from the East Coast, were almost dead. Like, no restaurant would like work with a local farm. That wasn't a thing. And then boom, you know, Michael Pollan wrote his books, and at least here that was, and you know, many other people deserve credit, but there are, you know, feminism, equity. It's often painful, like you were saying with Gandhi and Buddha and Jesus, that kind of wakeful political change that comes from spiritual depth is often derisively called woke by those who want to sit on the sidelines on Twitter, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think Greta's statement was so telling. First of all, it was an adolescent telling us, hey, there ain't no kind of fairy tale magic person with a wand. We've got to be adults. And she's told us to grow up so many times. Remember at the UN, she just said, you know, I'm telling a bunch of adults, like, do what it takes. I mean, this is, you know, I think about 3 years ago now. And she said, that's right. If you won't grow up and do the work, well, we'll have to do it. I'll have to miss out on school. I'll have to do this. So it's highly symbolic that a teenager's telling us to grow up and do the hard work. But the second aspect of it is inherent, as you say, is that this is like a win-win-win-win-win scenario. Because if we do the work, as you say, doing work, good active work, is the most joyful experience ever. All the studies now show that when we are of service and when we help out other people, that's when we actually get meaningful happiness, meaningful joy, as opposed to the fleeting kind of dopamine hit that we chase after in an empty fashion these days. And it brings about the meaning, which I feel is the thing that has caused us to get so lost in the first place. We are a lost species. We are a meaning-seeking species, as Nietzsche said. That's what we do. We seek meaning. And yet what we've done is shut ourselves off from that source, because the meaning comes from our attunement, our congruence, our connection with life, right? That's where we've always been able to find the answers. Yet we've put a whopping great Trump-like wall between that and us. And this process of coming back to nature, coming back to life, is, funnily enough, the exact thing that has caused us to get so off track in the first place. It's a return to it. And there's that beautiful word solastalgia, which is a homesickness for our nature. It's a beautiful word. And it was a word that came out of... it's a philosopher and scientist here in Australia, actually, but it has been used worldwide now. It's in response to the mining happening only about an hour and a half from where I live, where the beautiful landscape had just been dug up, and there was a depression that was sort of occurring in the local community, and he labelled it solastalgia, and it's, this homesickness for our nature, for nature. And so the return to it, as per Greta's thinking, it's just so necessary. There's no other way to go about this. Like, there's no shortcut, you know, and thank goodness for that, because the work that we need to do is going to define us. And even if we go down, if we don't make it, at least we'll have been engaged in something meaningful and beautiful in the process. So I'm sort of almost answering your question way back from the beginning of our chat. Why do I do this? Am I not nihilistic? Why am I hopeful? Because at bare minimum, what a way to spend your life. What a way to spend your life as a practice in reconnecting with life. I mean, why else would you do anything else?
Amen. A woman.
Should we go?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is by a pale, you call him pale stale male, or us. he's not stale, but he's a pale male, Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. And he says, things may be, I'm going to butcher his quote, but things may be hopeless, but I'll still wake up in the morning and do the best work that I can. And I love that attitude. Like, kind of, you need to have a little dollop of nihilism in that you're willing to look at how bad things, you have to be willing to stare, the void in the face and look at the plastic, look at the, emissions, look at what we're doing. Or, I'm vegan, look at the suffering we're causing with animals. But then you have to have that hope that says, and that meaning that says, I want to serve, I want to be a benefit, that's my joy. And a lot of people, I'm sure you get this too, say, well, this whole service thing is privilege. And I would remind them that, my mom never made more than $12,000 a year. She was a teacher. Service comes in all forms. Craftsman who made my mug here, he may not be wealthy, but he's doing stuff he loves. And at the same time, right livelihood, which is taught in Buddhism, does need to include the ability to pay our bills. So we're not saying like, go off and be a poet in the mountain, though that's great for some of us. But,
as Tima Chodron says, start where you are. And if you are a shift working nurse with 3 kids, you start with just, sharing a smile at the kettle in the room, when you're getting changed for your shift. It's being of service is not a dramatic action. It's starting and then it becomes exponential. I mean, Waylon, I've got a question for you, just in terms of, it's a really big one that I think people are almost scared to address, but if you're going to stare reality in the face, which we all have to do right now, to what extent do you feel that what is happening to us is almost like, well, if that's the sum total of our evolution on this planet, that we have evolved to a point where we think we can destroy our home and we aren't seeing the warning signs. We've known about the climate crisis for at least 30 years. We've known XYZ. We are not stupid. We know that if you get a takeaway coffee cup, right, a single-use thing, and then we put it in the bin, it's got to go somewhere and it's not going to be pretty. Like, we know all this. Our brains have evolved to a point where we should be more than capable of knowing all of this. To what extent do you feel that that this is what we deserve? And if that's kind of, I'll give you my take when I hear yours, because I've asked you the question.
Yeah, I think, on a simplistic level, that is completely true. But, who is the we? And I think you kind of answered this question earlier. Maybe we're in the green room. When you said the environment isn't out there, or animals aren't out there, or, climate change isn't out there, we are part of it. We are interdependent, as we say in Buddhism. And Greta Thunberg's generation doesn't deserve this. And the vulnerable and the poor, so many people can't think about service because they're just looking for their next meal, or they don't even have, bodily safety, whether because they're in war or sexism, rampant rape. I don't think the world deserves this. This world, the Louis Armstrong song, "What a Wonderful World." I really feel that song. And if you, look at some beautiful videos of nature, or, on your Instagram, or better yet, like your book urges us to get out in the real thing. I'm 2 minutes from the mountains here, which is a privilege. It's hard to say I would let this ship go down. And the ship may go down, as you said, but I'm going to try to get all the women and children off. If we're the Titanic, we're going to try to save as many as possible. And that's a kind of paternalistic comment, but, that was their approach. And at this point, if we can save as much, we're in the 6th extinction, if we can save as many sentient beings and as much biodiversity, and a lot of what we've caused is already going to happen for the next hundreds of years, no matter what we do. I mean, I've interviewed Bill McKibben a few times, and Deepak Chopra, I was going to say earlier, but I didn't want to, it's too name droppy. But when I interviewed him when I was a kid starting Elephant, he yelled at me because I said, the environment, something, blah, 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 the environment. He said, it's not the environment, it's our environment. We're part of it. Not
I've been told by Deepak Chopra as well.
What's that?
I've been yelled at by Deepak Chopra as well.
Yeah, and he's very sweet. Second interview, he trusted me and liked me. But first one, he wasn't effing around. And with his rhinestone, like fancy glasses and his cell phone, he was
like, fancy watches, and he's
he's a character. Anyway, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts on it, and I've gone down deep and dark into my spiritual practice on it, which sounds, a bit pretentious, but I feel that in some ways, if life gave us an out, gave us we're going to give you another chance, humans. We're going to give you a little bit longer, another century or two to, get this right, or just to survive because you're so awesome. You're so much more awesome than the rest of the planet that you've destroyed. I would be really spiritually disappointed, because my spiritual belief is in a certain beautiful oneness and almost inevitable logic, for want of a better word. That's a very cerebral phrase, but a kind of flow that happens. It would not make sense if we were saved from this without rising to our full potential. And if we don't rise to our full potential, there's a side of me that goes, we shouldn't be on this earth. We don't belong here. We didn't fulfill our mission. And therefore, so be it. So be it. And so in some ways, that also motivates me, is that we are meant to rise to our best selves. And if we pull this off, and a lot of people have been saying this, like I think it was Rebecca Solnit that says what we face with the climate crisis is like World War I, World War II, Vietnam, XYZ. She lists off a whole range of huge human crises piled in together, right? Without a common enemy, without an enemy out there, because the enemy is us. So it's huge. But if we do pull it off, what an extraordinary feat. Human nature, we will just go vroom in terms of expansion and our capacity and the love and the joy. It's exciting. Flip side, if we don't pull it off, I personally believe we're not meant to be here. And there's a certain amount of comfort I find in that. And I agree with you. I've got nieces and nephews, and I ran this theory by my father, who is the most besotted grandfather ever. And a very active, he's become more and more climate active, mostly because myself and my brothers and my sister are, pulled him into it. Nice. Although he started it for us because he's just a natural minimalist and lover of life. But I think I had to chat to him about it. And he was saying, but the grandchildren, he started weeping. And I said, Dad, I get it. But we are responsible for all of it, and even the children that are born into the world, they are the legacy. They are the continuation of this patterning. And if this is our patterning and it's not right for this planet and the balance of it, out of here.
The part we were kind of arguing in a wonderful way. I love this argument, and I am not, I'm delighted to get to have this argument with people who deeply think about it and feel about it. But there's that George Carlin quote, like, the planet will be fine, we'll all be dead. I personally, there's parts of what you say which I deeply agree with, and there's parts that I really deeply disagree with, which is way too human-centric. It's not about us. If we die, we are taking a great deal of this planet with us, the animals, the sixth extinction. Like, we are making a choice for a lot of nature and a lot of people. The people who are going to be okay are going to, just like with the coronavirus, which is like a dry run, are the people who can buy their $150,000, van life and drive up to Canada or whatever. The people who won't be okay are, there's going to be mass migrations, starvations, wars, mass rape. We've seen that with every kind of epic upset of nations before. And, I hope I'm wrong, and we can be wrong if we fix this. But I really feel like, if you ask me, are we going to save the planet? I would say, no. I think the climate change could unite the country, just like coronavirus could have united the world. But because of fake news and because of selfish, pale, what do you call them? Pale, stale males, Trump alone inspired half the planet to say that masks were political. We saw that movement arise all over the world. Media is so quick right now, social media. So we have to invest in truth and journalism. You're a good journalist. I'm a journalist. My dad is a journalist. He's also a Trumper, which is interesting. But you know, we have to invest in truth, because I do think if we are all seeing and hearing and feeling truth, we will engage with climate change and service and fighting for equity and making change. But if we don't,
we're not disagreeing with each other at all. The George Carlin quote is one that I think it was, you know, I think he said it in the 70s or 80s, and I think it was, for me, and it had a different effect on me. What it did for me was seeing it through the lens of maybe people who were caught up in this idea that we've got to save the environment, the planet, as though it's this thing out there.
Sure.
What it did, and I shared it with a number of people, it was a penny drop moment when they went, holy shit, this is existential. This is bigger than we thought. We thought it was just about saving a few koalas, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely part of it. But there was a lot of thinking in the environmental movement for many years, which was about sort of protecting us from the existential truth. That we won't even be here to be having a chat about this and telling jokes about it. So I know what you mean. It's another one of those get out of jail or get a hall pass from action if we take it to mean that it's just about saving humanity, not the planet. I mean, but really, is humanity without the planet? Elon Musk thinks the solution is to go to Mars. I find that more terrifying than dying, because I am of this planet. My joy, my happiness, my visceral sense of belonging is tied up with being in nature, but also seeing even just sunsets in a big city, or young faces as they, I don't know, head out to a park or whatever it might be. Like, this is not just about keeping our heart ticking over. This is about having our heart nourished and soaring. That's what existence is about for me.
So well said. Sarah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Real pleasure, real honor. Let's make lots of trouble over the next few years together.
A ruckus, as Seth Godin likes to say.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
And good luck over there, and I'll be watching the news very closely over the next 48 hours just to see how things are going.
Thank you. I know, it's troubling. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Wilson.